No doubt.
Yeah.
My wife's on it, heard of that. So we got that.
All right, so what do you see right now? You're just saying, are you able to greet people and all of that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to have this ready to go so that you can, I can share my screen when it's time, but I'm just getting kind of set. Okay, but now this is showing this screen. We need it to show
Yeah.
the Zoom. Okay, there we go. Right now, if I hide participants, will you still see them? Let me try to do that. Can you see participants on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, and this is what, more. This is word. This is where unable to send to the cloud. Well, we're having internet problems, huh? All right, I'm going to record to my computer then. It's the only option I have, unless, can you hit record to the cloud? Okay, then please do that. With the regular, this is a Zoom record. You can,
Yes.
okay, great. Then I'm not going to do that. Welcome. Okay, nice, Mary. Good. All right, this is good. Okay. All right. I think we're ready to start. Oh, Terry, sorry for the late start, but we're all chatting with each other, so that's good. Do you want to use the mic? Really, I think I have to walk into the middle of the room.
Yeah, do you want to use the mic?
Oh, the mic.
Yeah.
Then other people online, maybe.
Yeah.
Who do we have online?
Dylan, probably Hawkins and.
Okay, great. Alrighty, welcome, everybody. Sorry for the late start. We had a few tech issues. It all worked perfectly at 4 o'clock, but you know, had a different idea at 6:30. Working now. Sue Coakley, Chair of the Planning Commission. I am calling this meeting to order. It is our monthly meeting. And I welcome you all very much. We'll have a moment to do some introductions here. But I just want to do a couple of things. There are a few folks here on joining us by Zoom. Who are those, Mary?
We've got Dylan and Christopher.
Okay, great. Few members of the Comprehensive Village Plan Advisory Committee. So you should all have materials and you should all have signed into the meeting. And I'm going to review the agenda and then we'll do some introductions. So first of all, I should ask, are there any items for public comment that are not on the agenda? I see none, so we're just going to be able to move on. See, we just saved 5 minutes. We have to elect a planning commission vice chair. We'll take a moment to do that. We will not be reviewing for approval any draft meeting minutes. I didn't have time to print them all out and they weren't posted, so we'll save that for our next meeting. Planning commission action item review, we'll talk about a few things and do that in a few minutes. Then we'll spend a few minutes on the Wyndham Regional Commission draft future land use plan and a proposed change there. And then we're going to move into the comprehensive village plan, which is the A through D. The draft future land use plan will be a discussion that builds on the special meeting that we had last Tuesday. And we'll discuss some suggested changes to the map that we had. This agenda should also show comprehensive village plan. We see the details. This is where our consultant team, Dotson and Flinker, will talk about community engagement. We'll talk about fact finding. We'll talk about building types for the Putney Village. We'll talk about opportunity areas for village expansion and focal areas for concept plans. I will note that there is a relationship between that item D and over number 6, Wyndham Regional Commission draft future land use plan. And I'll talk at the time we get to that item about the relationship between the two and how they're different also. And then we'll wrap up. I will try to be done by 8:40. If we can do better than that, we will. You can note the upcoming meeting dates that are on our calendar in May and June. So any questions on the agenda? And then I'll go to introductions. All right. Silence is beauty. It's good. Okay, great. Let's first, I'll ask planning commission members to raise their hands. Those of you who are planning commission members. Would be Pip, Mary Tomford, Vanessa Long. And then we're going to go over here. We're going to start with Natalie. Would you just introduce yourself? And if you're part of the Comprehensive Village Plan Committee, please say that.
Great, hello, my name is Natalie Dreyer, I use she, her pronouns, I'm the Executive Director of Next Stage Arts, and I am part of the Comprehensive Village Plan Advisory Committee.
I work a lot with Natalie. I'm Barry Stockwell. I'm the programming and the production director at Next Stage and part of the advisory committee.
Pip, you've introduced, so.
I'm Dylan Sussman. I'm one of the consultants here to work on the comprehensive village plan.
I'm Peter Flinker. I'm another consultant.
I'm Marish Ulifa, PDM extension and I'm part of the advisory committee.
I'm Chris Beach and I am part of the advisory.
Hi, Dan Graham with Landmark, and I'm with the advisory committee.
I'm Meg Stella, I'm with DDCC, and I'm part of the advisory committee.
I'm Josh Merkins, and I think I'm part of the advisory committee now.
Welcome aboard, Josh. You warmed our hearts.
Oh, excuse me. Trying to get the dinner. Karen Astley, I'm town manager and I'm also on comprehensive village study plan committee.
Right.
Next, I think I'm a member of town.
Remember the town and you're on the advisory committee. Yeah,
I'm also a Landmark fellow.
so welcome home.
I'm Chris Couturier and I'm just a Putney resident.
I'm Rob Bainmeyer. I'm on the advisory committee.
I'll just note that Chris does many things, but she's also on the board for the Putney Community Center. Yeah, and so that's wonderful and important part of how we're thinking about the future of our village.
Carrie Lilly, Putney resident and a member of the comprehensive village advisory. Vanessa Long, Putney Planning Commission.
And online, Christopher, would you like to introduce yourself? Are you on mute? Okay, and who else is there?
Dylan.
Dylan, would you like to say hello? Oh, maybe that's not working.
I haven't seen Dylan on meet yet.
Okay, all right. So that is the introductions. So thank you all for being here. And I'm going to now move on to our annual election of Planning Commission Vice Chair. This is a position brought to my attention that we must have. It's an important role. Should the chair, me, not be available to run a meeting or do other things. And I'll be making a nomination look for a second of that from planning commissioners. We'll open it up for discussion if there is any, and then the planning commissioners will vote on the motion. So I will make a motion to nominate Vanessa Long to serve as the vice chair of the planning commission.
Second that.
Okay. Its motion has been made and seconded. Any comments or discussion about the nomination of Vanessa to serve as vice chair? I see a thumbs up to my right. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the motion. All in favor? Aye. You can vote for yourself, Vanessa. Great. All right, it was unanimous. Look at that. She voted for herself. She did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. And Vanessa is serving also as the lead for the Comprehensive Village Plan, and it's been really great to work with you, Vanessa. Thank you. So it's a good role at this moment in particular. Like I said, I'm going to dispense with minutes. Some of them have been posted, some of them haven't, but we're not really prepared to review them tonight. And we're short on time, so that will have to be on our next agenda. Any comments on that? Okay. We're getting close to where we should be on the agenda. So Planning Commission action item review. So in your packet, you will see a page. Did I bring one? I tried to bring one. 2-page memo. This is my way of helping the planning commission follow through on things over time because not everything happens right after a meeting. So these are action items. And I'll just do a high-level review. We'll note that we did a lot of things since the 10th of March on the future land use plan. Everything has been done, and tonight we'll talk about a recommendation to Wyndham Regional to make an adjustment. Comprehensive village plan, there are a lot of things in play that we're doing. Trying to get further information to Dodson and Flinker. Tonight we'll be talking about outreach plans, focus groups to put in motion outreach to the community and begin to engage a discussion. So that is up for tonight. And we will be inviting you all to participate in that. We did down at the bottom, number 8, under comprehensive village plan. Vanessa and I did some outreach. We're meeting here tonight. We'll be interested to hear. This goes to the action item, find a space with bigger AV capability, larger room for meeting. So we'll ask you tonight how well this space worked for you. We would plan to use this in some future meetings. So that is an action item. And on the other side are the things that are holding over, waiting for other actions to happen. And the only thing, couple things I will just highlight for you under ongoing tasks is that number 2, town plan tracking. I plan to have a tracking report ready for the select board for their retreat on April 18th. I've talked with them about a format. So finally that item will come forward. I also will note under housing, the whole idea of working with other towns with housing coordination services, qualified contractors network, low cost, low barrier funding. It's going to be a session at the Economic Summit on May 12th. I really encourage you all to come to the summit if you're interested. Oh, Meg's right here. Meg, am I doing the job right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Meg
Thank you super
puts it all together, and I'm very excited about a session that will be at the end of the day about how do we work together in our region to address these kinds of housing strategies. And I hope we come out of that with 3 towns ready to work together to put together a project to get funding to do it. And there's some other great developments at the state level. There's put some wind in the sails of that I'm excited about. So while housing, it's been a year, we've been working on it, and those recommendations, in addition to the comprehensive village plan, which was also a housing recommendation, be moving forward. I'll just note that on item 5B, high-low biddy 5-megawatt battery project, that project is imminently ready to be approved by the Public Utility Commission. I think it'll be this month, maybe next week. I think that they issue their final order. And then that will put in motion an invitation for them to come to Putney to talk about their project, talk to the select board, talk to the community, what it means, help us understand what it is, and build relationships there, including reining them in to make sure that we have the support we need for emergency response for this new facility. And on zoning bylaws, I would say that this moment, Pip Bannister and myself are in a pretty good place that we have something just about ready. I just need to make it presentable to all of you. And that's on my schedule for very soon this week. So that is the action item report. Following up, any comments or questions? Other than say it continues to be breathless to do all this work, but we're doing it. Take a breath. Okay. You can find more details about all of this in the planning commission chair's report that I gave last week to the select board. It's in your packet. You will see on the very last page a schedule, this colorful page of our projects, of what's going on, and the general for the next 12 months. So that's my report. Any questions on action items and next things and schedule? Okay. So that brings us now. I am liking this podium, by the way, Dylan. That's a good idea. Yeah, I like this stone. So anyway, so at our special meeting last week, which was attended by about 16 people, 17 people, including people, members of the public who were interested to learn more about it. And at that meeting, we got a better understanding of why the Wyndham Regional Commission is doing this. What is Act 181? And how does that relate to a future land use map for Putney, as they're doing for each town in Wyndham County? We're sort of at the end of the line. They've been doing it since October. At that meeting, we just a real quick thing to understand is that they're developing this future land use map because it is required by Vermont Act 181. And it identifies a range of land use types. It does a couple of things. One, it is an effort to have a consistent nomenclature and definition of land uses across the state. So each regional commission in Vermont is creating this and using the same definitions for these future land uses, and then applying them to their county. I'm not sure if it's true statewide, but certainly for Wyndham County, Wyndham Regional Commission is developed the map on parcels, which makes it a lot easier to understand things jurisdictionally, at least by ownership. And so we have that. The map is really for the future. It has no regulatory direct effect. It doesn't look like our zoning map. We noted that, which is a regulatory document. Though there are some things that are similar in certain ways. But a very important part of this land use map is really what you would call the tier 1 actions, which is about housing or village centers. And so in this map, they talk about what are current village centers, which brings a set of state programs and incentives to support development, housing and economic development and infrastructure. Also to look at planned growth areas. And that's partly in relation to some very aggressive and big housing goals the state has for the entire state, including for Putney and Wyndham County, for housing to meet housing needs. So they wanted to focus on villages, village centers. The idea is to cluster development in areas that are already developed and do infill and expansions related to infrastructure. And in doing that, it makes it possible for a town like Putney to ask to, for example, expand our current village center to additional parcels or to add growth, a growth area for the neighborhood district. So there's a village center, a neighborhood district under the designations. This map doesn't make those changes. It just says it could be in those areas. Pip?
Just a sort of distinction here, little language clarification.
Yeah.
There have been programs from the state that allowed Putney to have a portion of the village center be designated a village center. That's like in capital V, capital C. And that designation carried with it certain opportunities. And it's a little confusing because there's clearly a village center, but it may or may not fall into the strict boundaries of the state designated village center. Most of it is in the, common sense village center. But what's interesting is that the southern part of town is not. The area around the co-op, the library, rods, etc. That southern part of the Putney is not considered part of the original designated village center. Just maybe that's too much, but
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful. Mary, do I need to share my screen to be able to see this map? What do we need to do?
I will need to share it to the Zoom meeting.
Okay, I will do that. Share this map. Okay, share. There we got it. Okay. So just said a lot of words. the motion that I want to present tonight out of the conversation last Tuesday night is for Wyndham Regional Commission to modify their future land use plan to extend the village center to additional parcels. I'm just going to say it at a high level, and then I'm going to show it to you along Route 5 and along in that area, identify planned growth areas along South River Road, right out here, and in the neighborhood area adjacent to Ellis Hallway Drive and Old Route 5, and I'll show that to you, and to identify additional rural conservation areas, largely in floodplains that are around Sackett's Brook that are on either side of the neighborhood or village areas, and I'll show that to you. And also for one parcel on Bear Hill, the Conservation Commission identified as having a conservation easement, and that's been put here. So this would be the map with changes, and I'm going to try to make it big enough so that you can see it. There is this inset, but I'm going to start with this area. So what is different? I'm going to start with this. So what we have here is Route 5. So you can see, just to get oriented, Route 5 going north. We have 91 going north. We have the village center here. And we have where we're sitting here right now at Landmark College right here. So what's new is this green area here, which is the riparian area or the watershed area of Sackett's Brook. That area could never be developed. It's a flood area. Much of it is owned by Soundview currently. It was written as a rural village area, which means anything could be done there. In our view, we looked at it, said there's no development possible there. So can we just call it a conservation area? Because that's really its highest and best use. So they filled that in. This is at our request to fill that in the entire area that's in a floodplain. And Alyssa extended that from what we thought, Pip, because she said actually the floodplain is this entire area. Then to this area by coming down Route 5 and near High-Low Biddy Road, there's a pink shading here and a little bit across River Road here. And this pink shaded area would be what you would call a planned growth area. So it's where the village could go in the future. By being on the map like this, if we were to ask that as a community, and it was on Wyndham Regional Commission's adopted map at the state level, we would qualify to be able to do that. It doesn't do it, it just makes it possible in the future to do it. And Wyndham Regional Commission needs our answer this month to be able to send it into the Land Use Review Board. We can't wait till we're done with the comprehensive village plan when we're going to have a more considered process about that. But our town plan did say this area on South River Road should be considered for future expansion of the village or neighborhood areas for housing. And this area right here on the other side of that green spot would be also area for village expansion. It's land that is developable. And we also asked them to take this little tiny piece here down just beyond Carol Brown Way and Alice Hallway Drive along Old Route 5. There's an apple orchard there. And that would be, it's very near the infrastructure for water sewer. It could also be for expansion. So we asked them to add that. We did ask them to extend the village center all the way down here. Right now, the village center stops right around here. And we said this whole area of South Main Street actually is very much a part of our village center today. Transportation, food, there's a whole lot of things that are happening, shopping. There's a new crosswalk that will be being put in. It would be good. There are 32 buildings that would be access to state incentives if we extended the village center down there. So they show it here on the map that the future of the village center would come down there. This is the parcel up here that the Conservation Commission identified. I think, it's this one over here.
Yeah.
This one. That that is, has a conservation easement. And so Wyndham Regional Commission put that in as well. So that's another change from the map that we saw last week. The rest of it is what Wyndham Regional Commission had. We did these expansions and changes. It's confusing. You know, what does this mean for landowners? It doesn't mean anything really at the moment, because only until the town takes action is anything really different. It just says in the future, it could be that. That was a lot of talking. You can see now what's different. Maybe I'll just highlight it a little bit more. Can you see that? Yeah. Comments or questions about this? Oh, and I'll just say, if people feel like they need a lot more time to think about it, I would understand that. And maybe we can't take action tonight because this is a lot at once, but we have to do it this month. So I'm going to open it up for comments or questions, and it could be anybody in the room, but I certainly do want to hear from the commissioners and the town manager.
So can I just, to frame this is really for how Act 250 interacts with development, not so much local zoning, is that?
No, I mean,
Or
this
local zoning be adapted to match.
the local zoning largely looks a lot like this right now. What it is, it's these state designation programs that offer incentives. You'll see in your packet here, state designation, it's the one with a picture on the front, for community investment. And if you turn to page, oh, they're not numbered. How handy or not handy. You'll see center benefits, you'll see neighborhood benefits and requirements. It's like right in the middle of the document. It's a page with blue lines like this. It defines what you would have to have and that what benefits would come if you have it. Putney has had, and it was recently renewed just a couple of years ago, a village center designation for the smaller area that we're proposing to extend. We also have a neighborhood development, NDA, now they call it a neighborhood area, that is the south part of Main Street, and a bit above that. So this map already covers that. I mean, this is bigger than that. It sort of allows it to expand. It's not the same necessarily exactly as our zoning. Okay, there are different designation programs that take into consideration things like historic buildings and do you have a historic area district on the National Register? And we do that for part of our town. We might have to extend that because, you know, if we have applied for the designation. But I hope that helps a little bit. There's different layers. Pip, do you want to make another explanation on that?
To clarify that Wyndham Regional has been very explicit in their publications associated with this, that this is not the Act 250 determination. Many people are concerned about a process that the land use, what's the R?
Land Use Review Board, the LURB.
The LURB is doing, it will designate certain areas in the state as tier 3 areas having unique resource values, and that development within those tier 3s may trigger an Act 250 review. So none of what you're looking at here has anything to do with that. So in general, I would say this is, you know, part of the state's planning process, but not related to the development regulation side of it, which is Act 250.
Yeah, and we don't administer Act 250. That's done at the state level. There's a district commission, that environmental review board that does it.
Confusion is, there's a lot of confusion, as you may have been hearing about, backlash about Act 181 related to tier 3 determinations and the and requirements for Act 250 for things like a 2,000-foot driveway or an 800-foot road, etc. So it's all bundled in the same act of the legislature, Act 181. but the tasks that Wyndham Regional are doing are distinct from the issues related to the determination about what lands would be subject to Act 250.
Yeah, again, they were, because of the state housing development goals, right? This map was designed to help support that. And honestly, when you look at the maps they gave all the towns and the numbers of housing to be developed in Wyndham County, it's not enough, frankly. So by having some additional areas, this makes it more possible for Putney to have more housing, but it's largely about what you would call neighborhood and village centers and what would be, she said not to use the tier 1 because it gets very confusing for everybody, but it's really about that. And it does relate to our zoning, but this has no regulatory effect. Our zoning does, and it's more specific. Other questions? Karen?
Is there any way Wyndham Regional Commission can show percent of the lands that are in each designation?
I imagine that, I mean, we could ask Jeff if he could.
I mean, I think
quantify
that
it.
would give a bigger picture.
Yeah,
Like when I look at this map and I see rural agricultural and forestry, that's a big portion of Putney.
yeah.
So having like a percentage number would be helpful if it can be done.
Okay, we will take that as a piece of information that for consideration in understanding this map. Martha?
What are these acts you're throwing around? I'm going, what are these?
Yes.
things? I hear you, but what are?
So Act 250 was a very innovative land use law that was introduced in like 1975, something like that, around there. And it really followed on the heels of the interstate being built in Vermont, and a concern what that would mean for land development in Vermont. And it basically said if a parcel was of a certain size, it would have to go through this integrated review process that had a lot of requirements for development. It was the 10-acre rule, just to give you some flavor for it. And anything under 10 acres did not need to go through this more rigorous review, integrated review. But parcels that were bigger or had certain other aspects to them would have to meet the state environmental review requirements, and the state administered that. So I will give you an example. You're sitting right now in an area that the Landmark College had an Act 250 review process, and anytime it wants to do anything different on the campus or certain things, they need to go and make a change to their Act 250.
Student center.
Possibly, and Dan could attest to that.
Yeah.
So that's not the town. It's under an Act 250 review because there's a permit that enables certain things, and there's understandings and, conditions and allowances and all of that in it. So that is a longstanding law, and it is being revised because the implementation of it has become an impediment to housing, affordable housing, among other things, and other economic development. So there's been as well as making sure natural resources that are critical are being protected. I think there was a sense that none of it was really doing exactly that. So Act 181 was to say we need to renew Act 250 for today and make changes. And there are some very hard, difficult conversations to have about land rights, natural resource preservation, where growth can happen, all of that. So that's happening now at the state level in that. And then eventually one day that will affect us. And it's part of why we put part of our zoning regs regarding those areas off until the state has finished what their policy is going to be. And then we're going to come back and look at forest blocks and so forth and when they're done. I hope hopefully that helps you that. It's a very long story, but that's the summary.
Thanks. Clear enough.
Yeah.
What you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned about Act 250 when I was a student here, an environmental science student. Steve Anderson taught me about it. Any other comments or questions? I want to move on to the rest of our program for the evening. But I guess the question I would have, and again, I haven't heard much from the commission about this. Certainly Pip had a lot to do with putting this together. Do we feel ready to adopt a motion to ask Wyndham Regional Commission to make changes like this to the map? They would do that. So we can make a motion, have a second. There's a motion. I think Vanessa's putting her hand up. Is that a motion?
I can make a motion, but I just wanted to say that based on the feedback that we heard at last week's meeting, I want to really thank Pip and Sue for doing the thoughtful work. I know that you were on site doing the review of all of these spaces to really incorporate the community's concerns and feedback. And I really do feel like this does reflect that, both the extension of the village center designation down to the southern part of Putney, the Sackett's Brook conservation piece, and then also the River Road bit as well. I think that that really reflects the feedback that we heard last week. And based on that, I would be ready to put forth a motion to say that we should adopt or
Right.
recommend these changes to Wyndham Regional.
Great. Let me see if there's a second. So the motion, let me just say, I've written the motion out. That just describes the changes because
Yes.
as the one who takes minutes these days, it's really helpful to have it written out for everybody, I think.
Sure.
So you can give it, why don't you read it over and see what you think about that? There's a question back here and then I'm gonna come back to the motion, Karen.
If the planning commission approves the changes this evening, can this map be changed in the future?
That's a great question, Karen. This is one of the reasons why we're changing it now, because at the very end of last week's meeting, Alyssa Sabeto said, you know, we're going to be sending this to the Land Use Review Board this month. And once they make their determination, whatever that is, it will be very hard to change it later. And so her recommendation is ask for what you might want in the future now. It's very possible that the Land Use Review Board will push back and not grant this. So it's not like it's a slam dunk. They may have their questions about it. That might be more information you wanted, but that's the story. So, but this is our bite at the apple now.
Okay, so I have a follow-up question. And I know anyone was invited to this meeting, but has the select board seen this map?
No. We put this together today. I mean, it's just been the last week. I did describe this at high level to the select board.
I have not seen that.
No, we have not. This was produced at 3:00 this afternoon. Yeah. So it could be that we have to put it off and consult with them. That's one of the considerations. And I also have a consideration for the community. I don't want the community to feel like we moved too fast, right? That's been a concern in the past. Unfortunately, we're given this month, right, to have to make a decision. Otherwise, we're going to go with the map that Wyndham Regional Commission had. So, you know, it's a challenge.
They have a meeting April 15th.
Yep, and I could present it then.
I would suggest that this be floated in front of them.
And then the Planning Commission have a special meeting after that to adopt the changes?
You do have a special meeting coming up, right? April
No.
21st.
Oh, is that on there still?
Yes.
It's well, that could be the date. You know, we're still trying to figure there's a lot of moving pieces right now.
Yeah.
We could have a special meeting. I did want to say it does feel fast, right? We got this at 3:00 today. It's been in discussion for several days, but it was just last Tuesday that we met. So this is about as fast as one could go. And I just want to say right now, Wyndham Regional Commission, thank you, Jeff Nugent, for doing this today. I mean, it was a turnaround that was really quick. So we could have a motion and table it, present it to the select board for their information, get their feedback, and decide what to do. But the clock is ticking and we do need to get back to Wyndham Regional Commission this month as a planning commission. So great question. And there could be a lot of wisdom to present this to the select board.
I agree, it's quick, but. You know, the planning commission has its own unique responsibilities and some autonomy, and, you know, we've been empowered by. The enabling legislation to take actions. I would think it reasonable for us to have a vote this evening. Present that vote as a vote of support for this map and discuss it at length with the select board. If the select board had issues that really were significant, you know, then we could address them. But I think it carries some weight to say that the planning commission has looked at this, certainly, you know, these two planning commissioners have spent a lot of time on it. And it has our vote of support, acknowledging that we were given very little time, and that the sort of the sensibility of this is as a future planning document, and it has no regulatory impact at the moment. You know, so we want to just, let's try to get as many possibilities on the map. And as was already mentioned, we may not be permitted to extend our designated village center south, because it's sort of on the margin of what some of the requirements they have. So I would be lobbying for making the motion, acting, and sharing that information with the select board.
And then if they have real feedback, that we
Then
take
we
it under
can
advisement
figure it
what
out
to do
together.
about that. Thank you for that. Mary?
Yeah, I think that we have definitely gotten feedback of moving too quickly. I think that this, as you mentioned, is not regulatory. And it does make sense that the southern portion of our Putney kind of business sphere be included in the village center. Because ultimately that is an area for growth. We've got a lot of area in which we can infill a lot of different things. So for me, it makes sense to present to the select board, but with the understanding that planning commissioners have reviewed this, and we're in support of this as non-regulatory moving forward.
Okay. Great. Now, let me just ask the room if there's any other comment, and then I'm going to call the question so we can move on to the rest of our agenda tonight. I'm not trying to cut it off, but I also, I also want to move on if we can. All right. I hear nothing else from the room. So we have a motion. Is it been seconded?
I will second.
Mary seconded the motion, and the motion, let me just be clear, Vanessa, is what is on front of everybody.
Would you read it?
I will read it. The Planning Commission thanks the Wyndham Regional Commission for the opportunity to review and comment on Wyndham Regional Commission's draft Putney future land use map developed in compliance with Vermont Act 181, and requests that the Wyndham Regional Commission update the draft map as follows. 1, extend the village center area to include land parcels along Route 5, Main Street, south to the town line with Dummerston, including parcels along Alice Hallway Drive, Carroll Brown Way, and contiguous portions along Old Route 5. That's 1. 2, identify as additional planned growth areas parcels along South River Road to the National Grid transmission line and adjacent to the neighborhood area at Alice Holloway Drive and Old Route 5. And 3, identify as additional rural conservation areas parcels in the Sackett's Brook riparian areas that are at risk of flooding and are therefore not suitable for development. And B, an area on Bear Hill that the Conservation Commission requested be designated as rural conservation as it has a conservation easement. So just trying to describe them, and then the map goes with it to make it very clear. So thank you for asking me to read that. All right. That said, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Aye. And an action item will be for me to report that to Wyndham Regional Commission and to let them know that we will discuss it with the select board next week. And I will ask the town manager to put this on the select board meeting. I would invite the planning commissioners, if you can, to join me for this presentation, if you can, next Wednesday. And if we have to have another meeting on it, we will. But if the select board feels this is appropriate, then we won't have to have another meeting about it. So that was a wise suggestion. All right, it took a long time. Thank you, Dodson and Flinker team, but it's what it needs to be. With that, Unless there is any other business that we need to take, I think we did it all. Commissioners, anything else that we need to do? Okay, I'm hearing nothing. So now I'm going to turn this over. Dylan, would you like me to pull up your PowerPoint now? Okay. All right, I'm going to stop share and I have your PowerPoint here ready. There it is. Okay. There it is. All right. And we can move this into. It's awful how it does that. Let's see, we have to slideshow here. This one, okay. Usually do it from the bottom. Okay, great.
All right. How many paths to the same location?
Yes.
All right. Good evening. Can you all hear me through the mic? Is that working okay? All right, great. Yeah, so thanks for having us back. It's been about a month since we were with you last talking about the comprehensive village plan. As a reminder, I'm Dylan Sussman. Peter and I introduced ourselves, but Eli was out of the room. So back there is Eli, who's with us tonight as well. And Eli made all the maps you're going to see tonight. So he's been hard at work doing GIS. So the first thing we wanted to talk about were focus groups.
That might. What?
This one?
Yeah, I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
You got it.
We don't check it with.
What do you think?
Just move it lower.
Does that work?
Everybody can see? Okay, great. So the first thing we want to talk about is community engagement update. So the focus groups are scheduled for the 16th of April, and Sue and Vanessa have done a great job of laying out a schedule and finding a space, and they really need your help in identifying specific individuals to invite. Vanessa, did you want to talk about that? You want to come up here and grab the mic?
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have found a place for the focus groups. Focus groups are scheduled for April 16th, which is next week, Thursday. So that's the time that we have to drive people to the focus groups. And that's where we really need your help from the Project Advisory Committee. I sent everybody one of these, which is the focus group kind of plan. So there's going to be 4 focus groups, one starting around 8 o'clock. And the first 3 are going to happen at the fire station. So thank you to the Putney Fire Station for allowing us to use their space. And then the last one will happen here at Landmark College, and we'll start at 5:30. And thank you so much to Landmark College again for being so generous with your space and your food and your time and your help and everything. So so the first one will be really focused for real estate developers, builders, landlords, contractors. So these are our housing and kind of developer people that have the knowledge and kind of insight into what would make that work best. And Putney focused, of course, but then Maria also and I were also talking earlier today about how it's might be good to have some perspective for folks who have experience in Southern Vermont too. And might have a little bit of a broader perspective for that group. 10 o'clock is business owners, local employers. And 12:30 to 1:30 is folks interested in walking, biking, walkability, recreation, green space. So if you know folks that get excited about those kinds of ideas, please direct them to the 12:30 group. Yeah, Martha.
You might wanna talk to the library and be involved with Lynn, and Susan who run the one.
Great, thank you. Can you send that to me in writing, and it will definitely be noted. And so I think that Sue and I are going to meet on Thursday this week, and that's when we really want to have a final list of folks to reach out to. And if there's anybody that's really excited about helping us with that effort of reaching out to people to help guide them, I think that, you know, a warm invitation is always better than a cold one. So we really need your help with that. And then 5:30 to 7, I think will be just a more general one. So it's for folks that live in this community. And also thinking about arts and cultural spaces. So if you have thoughts about that. I know that there's a lot of overlap in the community. And if you see yourself in one of these groups, I would invite you to come. You might have a different, is that okay?
Something.
Good, yes, because that's what we want you there for. I know that we, the planning commission, commissioners ourselves will probably not be in the groups or in the room to let the team do their work. But the committee, that's why you're here, is because you are in this group. So thank you. I have gotten a couple of actually completed ones back already. So thank you for those of you that did that. And does anybody have any other thoughts or questions about the focus groups? Wow, we must have nailed it then.
I'll just add that this part of the community engagement is different than the other ones. The other one
Yeah.
would be invite the public to.
Yes.
These are by invitation only. So we're not going around handing out cards saying, oh, if you have time, come. You know, it's a
Right.
select group. And so Vanessa and I will be calling that list and trying to build it out if we feel like it's just not robust enough. To have people, and I think, Dylan, how many people are you saying, like up to 12 is what you were
Yeah,
saying?
8 to 12 would be ideal.
Yeah,
Yep, enough that people can have a robust conversation, but not so many that they don't get a chance to talk.
yeah. So,
Karen, did you want to say something?
Are you getting the names I put on the list?
yes,
All right. I
Yeah.
Wanted to confirm because I don't know if that ever works.
no, I have it. I have it in mind and I'm giving that to Vanessa.
Good.
It has become apparent that there's been a couple of different places that names have been collecting too. So
Yeah,
if you feel like, feel free to resend as well. If I guess Sue's got it.
I've got
So we're each getting it in different places. Good. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Yes, the shared document.
Yep.
I don't do well with those.
you know, she was out in the office because open meeting law doesn't want us to have shared documents that way. For administrative processes, I use them sometimes just to create something that is going to be used, but there's restrictions on shared documents for planning commission work. It's really hard.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we'll be doing is maybe if there are people that you feel like are extra important that the team should be talking to, but maybe they can't show up for the interviews, please let us know because there will be a limited number of like individual interviews too, with people that have a lot to contribute to this process. And so that brings me to the next part, which is the public outreach plan. So this is for the next stage, which is the broader community. So this is the charrettes, the community supper, farmers market. And so this is really, again, we're going to ask you to invite people to attend these events and to show up yourselves as well. I think they'll be fun. It sounds like they're going to be fun. And a really great,
Joyful, right?
joyful, yeah, a really great place to kind of play and vision and, you know, have a good time. Any thoughts that you have about the outreach plan, again, please feel free to send to me. And we're in development right now with a little card and flyers. So that is the thing that we'll be able to hand out and say, hey, come to this community charrette, please. we really would like it to happen.
Right, or see, the consultant team at the
Right.
community supper and.
Connect with the team
I
at
think
the
we're getting
supper
those-
and
we'll get
the
to
farmer's
dates in a
market.
few minutes, because we'll be able to do the card when we have dates.
Exactly.
Their dates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that in a little bit.
Well, we probably should,
Yeah.
because I think we're gonna get the whole,
I don't have dates for those, for the community supper and
you don't.
not tonight, no. I
Okay.
was hoping we could
We'll work
talk about that after. this
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Great.
But we do have a date for the design shred. So last time we were here, we talked about having design shred in May. It seemed like that was just a little too rushed. So it's now going to be June 11th and the 13th. So that's a Thursday night and a Saturday morning. So we have, a good amount of time to prepare for that, and get the word out for that. I assume the community supper will be probably in May, second.
Yeah, that would be the one
Yeah.
to do, because otherwise we're in July.
Yeah. So,
Unless you want to come to this community supper.
Or the one in between.
yeah. So we'll figure out the community supper and we'll let you know about that soon. So
And then the farmer's market.
in the farmer's market will be after the design shred. June 13th will be in the morning, probably be like a 10 to 12 kind of thing, approximately.
And then the 11th will be in evening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So Saturday morning, we find people are often, they don't, they think, oh, I can't possibly come on a Saturday morning. But then people do show up and we find it's a more relaxed time to meet. People come, ideally there's a little bit of coffee, get some jazzed up, a little bit of food. And it's just, it's a pretty productive time to have a meeting, compared to the evenings when people are burnt out and tired from their day at work, as I imagine you all are now. So can we move on?
Let's move on.
All right, we're gonna move on. So any questions before I go to the next thing? All right, so we're a little behind schedule and we're already trying to squish a lot of things in. So before I start, I want to check with people about if we went over tonight, who has a hard stop at what our original time was, which was 8:40. Who needs to leave at 8:40 for sure, or is gonna just be asleep and turn into a pumpkin? Anybody? Pip's gonna be a pumpkin. Okay. Sue will be a pumpkin. All right. If we went until 9, would people be amenable to that? Would people be okay with staying till 9? Raise your hand if you're okay staying till 9. No pressure. Okay, if your hand is not up, I'm assuming you're not willing to stay till 9. Raise your hand if you really want to get out of here at 8, whatever it was, 35?
40.
8:40? I gotta get out of here at 8:40, raise your hand. No, okay, so I see some people are willing to stay till 9 and some people are sort of don't want to, but on the fence. All right, let me just look at my clock here. So we've got about an hour. All right. I'm going to go through some presentation. I'm probably going to skip over some slides and Peter's going to do the same. And then we're going to have a brief group discussion. Okay, so we wanted to focus tonight on this one of the project goals, which was in the RFP, the request for proposals that we responded to, which is kind of our charter for what to do for work. One of the objectives was to identify sites for new and expanded affordable and mixed income housing with suggested housing types, and sites for local business development with suggested building types. And we're really focusing tonight on that housing question of sites for housing and housing types. So the presentation tonight, we've looked at which sites have potential for housing. We want to show you some examples of housing types and ask which types of housing do we want to test out through this process. And then we want to put those two things together and look at which sort of areas specifically in your village center should we look at for which types of housing, or which areas for design explorations. And they're kind of, those design explorations will happen in the design charrette in June, and also in our office. So part of the goal tonight is to start to figure out what we want to be showing at the charrette. So we're asking you, like, not only what makes sense, but also what's acceptable to show in a public setting.
Yeah, not to interrupt you,
Oh,
but
you're interrupting.
well, while you're thinking about this, absolutely, we have a lot of stuff to present tonight. There's a lot of information about, what's feasible in terms of construction, a lot of information about different housing types. Don't panic, because basically one of the advantages of moving the shred a little bit further out is we'll have more meetings to talk about this in more detail. But I think, as we said in the last meeting, this is an iterative process where we don't know what's important to you to know in order to make good decisions about where to build. We don't know what's important to you to make good decisions about what we want to test out. And so we're going to present some stuff tonight about information about site planning. And as you're thinking about that, think about, is this enough to really make good decisions about which parcels to focus on? And as we show you the housing examples, it'd be really useful to hear, this is terrible, or go back to work and find more about cottages or townhouses or whatever it might be. So as you're looking at this stuff, just think in terms of what's the next iteration that you'd like to see. And we'll bring that back to the next meeting, because I think that's how we'll really narrow it down in both directions. Sorry.
That was a good interruption. All right. So yeah, so the first part of this is looking at potential for housing on sites, looking at development constraints, and also zoning. So that's what Peter was just talking about, is that shared fact finding of, we're going to present you with information and we want to know, do you trust this information? Is it the right information for you to make decisions, or do you want us to give you other stuff? So this is a reminder of what the study area is. So it's the areas that were formerly in your neighborhood development and designated village areas, but are now in your new village center and planned growth areas and village areas. So roughly from, Putney Landing, up north to the school, and out Bellows Falls Road to River Road. So you did a housing need assessment and action plan, and as a result of that, there were these 5-year success indicators identified by the Planning Commission. And for the village center focus, it identified the need for, within 5 years, 13 new affordable ownership homes, 35 new market rate homes, 35 new affordable apartments, and 20 new special needs housing units in the vicinity. So we're kind of using that as like a target for this planning for the comprehensive village plan for the short term, right? You probably want to go beyond that, because you probably don't want to stop building housing after 5 years. You need to keep on going into the future. But so approximately 100-ish units, right, within the village area within 5 years is the goal. This is a map of the current land use in the study area. I think the things to notice are, so the green stuff is, conservation and undeveloped land. The thing to notice are these red areas. So these are commercial and retail office kind of things. And there's sort of a cluster around the Putney Diner and the town hall. And then there's another cluster down by the library, heading out to the co-op. And then there's a bit of a cluster in the middle. And what I heard at the last meeting on the site walk is that this used to be a little bit more continuous, and that it's sort of receding from the middle, and then also receding a bit within the north as well. So as you've lost businesses in those areas, the village center is it's probably historically been two different parts, right? The south end, which are larger parcels, kind of more highway oriented, and then the north end, which is more of a true walkable historic village center. So that's all I want to say about the land use for now. This is a map showing the residential units by parcel. So we analyzed how many units are in each parcel, and then map that, and the different size dots show you the different sizes of the number of units. And what you can see, that the dots are relatively scaled, like proportionately, right? So what you can see is that single family houses, you get not much development on big tracts of land. And that when you get into multifamily development, you get a lot more units on a lot less land, right? So you get sort of more bang for your buck in terms of housing potential. And again, there are kind of these clusters of, there are more units clustered in those two sort of 2 or 1 village center areas at the north and south ends of the village. So we produced a set of 3 maps, and then we overlay them together. And those are to try to give us a picture of constraints on development. So the first of these maps are regulatory constraints to development. So these are things that make it legally difficult to build, like 50-foot wetland buffers and the river corridor and small stream setbacks and protective areas around your well, around your wells. The takeaway for me is that there's this strip down the middle that's relatively constrained legally by the Wilson wetlands and the Sackett Brook. And other than that, the area is relatively unconstrained. So you saw that map earlier of your potentially future land use map that Wyndham Regional Commission put together. And that green strip is this that Sue was talking about, right? It's a constrained area. These are physical constraints to development. It looks like a giant bruise or something. So it's showing you FEMA floodplains, right? So not easy to build in. Those are this hatch, magenta hatch. The wetlands, again, not a place you want to build both regulatorily and also just because it's tough to do. And then in brown are steep slopes, over 25%. You may be able to build on them if you really, really want to, but it's expensive, right? And then the yellow is steep slopes 15 to 25%, which again, you might be able to build them, but it's going to cost you a lot. And then there's all this area that's mapped according to NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service of the federal government, as shallow bedrock. So those are the purple that's underneath the brown in many places. So this big hilltop here, you can see people have built there anyway, but it's going to be more difficult than an area with soils that you can easily put a foundation into. So big picture here is that the areas where you have roads were built in areas that are easy to build in, and then you've had development along those roads because it's easier to build in those places. So, these areas that are white on the map, stretching along Westminster Road, and then getting skinny along Kimball Road, and then opening up a little bit in the old village center, getting more skinny, and then opening up a lot in that southern village center is sort of the least constrained area in the study area, as well as across from the school along Westminster Road. So a lot of these parcels here are kind of built up to the edge of steep slopes, as well as on this side of Main Street. So those are the physical constraints to development. And then parcels that are unlikely to be developed. These are our guess based on the current use that may be less likely to change than other places. So obviously, protected land is unlikely to change because it's protected. Town-owned parcels, in some cases, may be less likely to change because you have to take a town action. It's a big democratic process and people don't necessarily agree. On the other hand, they may be, if the town really has a strong need to do something, you may be able to generate the political will to change the use of one of these town-owned parcels. So I think that one question we have for you is, should we think about town-owned parcels or should we not? Condominiums are kind of like towns writ small. You have a bunch of landowners who maybe are unlikely to be able to agree to make a change together. So we often exclude those. So that includes the co-housing complex and then the old house in the front of the co-housing complex on Main Street. We included the co-op and then civics and arts groups, churches, and we included parcels that have over 20 units just because it seemed like maybe they've reached their their limit in terms of investment. And we have a question for you later on about a couple of those over 20 unit parcels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about that prior map? Just, you have the Soundview facility in the village black.
Mhm.
That just means.
Yeah, so the black are just, these are buildings.
Just footprint.
That's just the footprint of the building.
Got it.
Big building,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of square feet.
a lot of square feet, it stands out. Okay, so then another factor in this is water and sewer. So this area, according to your town plan, has sewer that stretches up underneath the area that has water. And so the green hatchets going this way, this area has water and sewer. This area has sewer, but no water. This area has sewer, but no water. According to the town plan, there's a design flow of 100,000 gallons per day. Currently, the flow is about 52,000 gallons per day, which they said was about 65% of the recommended maximum capacity. So according to the town plan, the wastewater treatment plant can potentially accommodate somewhere between 35 to 100 new dwelling units, depending on the mix of housing types and sizes. So that's interesting, right? Because that's the number that the housing plan came up with for within 5 years. So if the housing plan goal is achieved, then potentially you've hit your maximum wastewater treatment capacity within 5 years. We've been looking into this sewer system and sewer service area. At this point, what we know is we don't fully understand it. What we've heard from Pip sent an amazing email to us. Basically, it sounds like this area, kind of from the top of Kimball Hill, the highest point on Kimball Hill coming up the road is a little bit less clear that you can make new sewer connections there because of the way the infrastructure is set up. When you overlay those things together, you overlay the physical constraints, the regulatory constraints, and the current use of the parcels, you get another crazy psychedelic map. And what you see is there's even less land available to develop. Yeah. So we transform that into just two colors, right? Black, unlikely to be developed, heavily constrained, and yellow, unconstrained. This map looks a little bit more sunny and hopeful, right? So again, you can see like some of the larger parcels. You can see there's a lot of yellow in here, but there's crazy steep slopes all through it, so it's going to be really difficult to develop in there. And again, the southern portion jumps out, as well as areas along River Road, particularly up there hidden behind the Zoom panel. Where there's some farmland, which, has its own value, and you may or may not want to develop down in that location. Okay, I'm going to turn now to zoning, which is the other kind of key constraint on development. There are 5 zoning districts in the study area, 6 zoning districts. We're mostly focused on the village district, the village residential district, the multiple use district, and the rural residential district, because conservation and resource districts are really intended for conservation and resource protection. Moving on. What's important from this table, this is from your proposed zoning changes. And what's important is that it's fairly permissive in terms of residential use. So single family houses are allowed in all of those zones. 2 dwelling units are allowed in the village through the multiple use zone. 3 is as well. 4 is allowed in village residential, and multiple use. And then multiple dwelling units, which was formerly called multifamily, is allowed in the village residential, and the rural residential, oh, sorry, and the multiple use with a conditional use permit in the rural residential. So the zoning is, in terms of use, is relatively it's allowing housing to happen. We looked at the parking for these things. Come back to that later. And then we did little diagrams to see, like, okay, what is it possible on a typical lot on a typical minimum lot for, according to the zoning, to actually build at the density that the zoning allows. So we sort of were testing, is the proposed zoning actually gonna work? Is it gonna result in feasible development in terms of just, can you fit enough stuff on the parcel? We often find when we do this test that it doesn't work. Your zoning, the conclusion is the proposed zoning allows you to do enough development. It allows enough, the dimensional regulations fit together enough that you can actually develop what it says you're allowed to develop.
Good job, thank you. I think you said this is the minimum lot area.
Yeah.
So if you are, striving to
Yep.
maximize and looking at the smallest amount of land you're permitted to build on, that's what this indicates. Yeah, just
Yep.
to make it clear.
Yeah.
And you guys did your work too. You really did good job with that. It actually works.
Yeah.
Now, how many variances are there? Probably lots, but.
Yeah. So this, as Pip said, these are the sort of smallest lots. You can have bigger lots, and if you have bigger lots, then you start to get more development potential. So I'm going to skip through these, and they'll be available for you to look at later. So this is what the village residential minimum lot size could look like. That's what the multiple use minimum lot size could look like. And that's the rural residential. So you see there's, a big difference in potential density between village district and rural residential district. We took.
We've never seen it represented graphically that way. It's really interesting. So thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, since you mentioned, I'm going to say one thing. One thing that's interesting from this is that your maximum lot coverage standards mostly probably will not have any impact, except potentially in the village residential on those small lots. So this little box here is showing your maximum lot coverage, and you can see you can fit your parking and you can fit your building in pretty easily. If you start going to like 2 houses instead of 1 to get the same number of units, it's going to be more difficult, but for the most part, those are not having much impact, and neither are the setbacks in terms of development potential. Okay, so going back to the story here. So we took those numbers of what the zoning allows for residential build out, and Eli crunched a lot of numbers, and he looked at the zoning is actually it's pretty complex because your zoning map does not follow parcel lines. So when we get to the end of this project, we may be making a recommendation that your zoning map be changed to follow parcel lines.
Yes, we 100% agree. It's just a task that we hadn't yet moved up to. Just as an aside, the WRC Act 181 mapping is the first time we've seen a parcel-based division in Putney that it corresponds a little bit with our zoning. So it's a great exercise for us. We want to end up there. It just was more challenging than we had energy for in this go around of zoning. But thank you.
Yes. All right. So we have our first action coming out of the plan. So the zoning map breaks up parcels in complicated ways, and you may have 2 or 3 different zoning districts on one parcel, and each one of those has different requirements. So we had to figure out how do we calculate the maximum build out for each one of these parcels. So this map is showing you according to zoning, not according to the real world, but according to just zoning, how many units can you develop on each lot. The yellow colors are the lowest potential units. So in here, you're talking about 0 to 2 units. Or in here, the sort of tan to orange color is the next of 3 to 5, and it goes up from there. And when you get into these blue areas, it's just according to zoning, you can build, 80 plus units. But we already saw that a lot of this is like floodplain, right? Or it's with the Wilson wetlands, so there's not really going to be development in here. On the other hand, this is a town-owned DPW parcel. It's relatively flat. I'm sure the DPW loves having it. But you could fit
Town garage.
town garage,
Oh,
public works, or what do you call it, highway or DPW?
Town garage.
Town garage, all right, it's the town garage. So, and then these kind of purple colors, the school, probably not gonna have development there. Across the street, large parcel, flat, has a lot of development potential on it. And then say, Putney Landing already has multifamily housing on it, but it could fit another 40 to 80 units on it according to the zoning. So I guess the pattern to see here is even though your zoning is more restrictive in kind of the outlying areas, with the big parcels, you still get a lot more development potential than you do with the small village parcels, even though the village parcels allow 12 units per acre versus like 4 units per acre, or 2 units per acre. So there is, according to the zoning, some development potential in the village. And I think there's going to be a question to wrestle with of, are we advocating strongly for concentrating development in the village center, and that's really what we want to focus on? Or is there an appetite for development on some of these larger parcels that are a little further from the edges of the village center? Or are we doing both? And then what does that look like?
And I just maybe a clarification as you go, are you only looking at new units? Because in our housing study, we said a lot of our housing can come from making investment in existing units that are very underutilized and also needing updating. So we can't just look past those that are actually an asset.
Right.
So are we thinking about the renewal and expansion or reuse, new uses of existing properties? And we have a number that are just unaffordable for people to maintain, and they are an asset.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so this is looking at yeah, so this was looking at what's possible under the zoning, and then this is looking at new units on top of what's there currently. So we basically took the zoning build out, we subtracted the units that are there. It looks very much the same, right? Because you're subtracting 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 units from them. The big differences are in the village center, where this is how many you could build out, and then when you subtract the units that are there, it drops down a category. All right, so then overlaying those two things together, the development constraints and the zoning, you get this map, which kind of highlights, we've knocked out that area that was showing us like 80 plus units in here. And you start to see places that have both development potential under zoning and also potentially development potential physically. And again, your eye may be drawn to the giant parcels, but there are also opportunities in the more densely settled areas. Some specific parcels I wanted to ask about are these ones up here, which we had knocked out because they're owned by Landmark College, but we've heard that Landmark College might be interested in doing some housing development or other change. The town garage parcel, and then Putney Landing and the parcel that is behind it. So when we get to discussion, I want you to think about those parcels in particular. So the ones owned by Landmark College, the town garage, and Putney Landing. All right, Peter, you have like
Half an hour? No.
5 minutes?
5 minutes. Yeah, so what we're gonna do is, we're gonna talk about some housing types, and then we're gonna let people look at the maps in more detail. We have two big maps, so we can, hopefully everybody can have a chance to look at those. And then we want to hear, does this make any sense? And what more information do you need in order to make it make sense? It may just be time and the ability to see something up close, hopefully. So yeah. Well, look at this. You must have written this. Was it? Yeah, once buildable sites are identified, so sort of a multi-step iterative process. So we're going to find areas that look like they have potential for housing, big or small. And then we want to test over the course, particularly of the charrette, what would different housing types look like in those places and how could they be configured? And that includes different housing types, which I'll show you, different densities and configurations, with the goal of finding the best fit for the village, right? And that's sort of going to be a complex discussion because a lot of people who live in the village will say the best fit is nothing because I like my quiet, empty lot next to my house, and please don't put any kind of housing there. So that's going to be a lengthy discussion, but the question is, if you did have to have housing next to your house in an empty lot, or if you did want to add a unit or two to your own house, what's the best configuration and what would that look like? So what housing types do we want to test out? When I started doing this work, there were relatively small range of housing types, right? There was, especially allowed by zoning, there was like the big single family houses, which is what the developers have been building for many years. And then there was the big sort of shoebox apartment buildings and very little in between. And that's sort of, a lot of you have heard the phrase missing middle housing, which was developed by Dan Perolick, who's a Californian architect, probably 15, 20 years ago, basically coming out of studies of lots of towns where you can no longer build anything except this, or maybe this down by the highway. But especially in historic communities like Putney, you already have many things in between, right? Little 2-family houses, 3-family houses, big houses that have been cut up into smaller apartments. You might have small, apartment buildings that were actually built. You have walk-up apartments, etc. And a lot of that stuff was illegal for many years in a lot of communities in the Northeast because of zoning. So happily, there's been an explosion in different housing types over the last 20, 30 years that towns are allowing to be built and that developers and builders and architects are experimenting with and actually building. So I'm going to quickly sort of go through a range of those and try to get some feedback from you as to what you think would be a good, not necessarily knowing the best fit for Putney right now, but what are the things that would make a good test case? So sort of not the lowest density necessarily, but the smallest unit type is the cottage or the accessory dwelling units, which have been, again, across the country are being enabled by zoning and by state legislation. Basically small single-family houses, essentially a cottage that you might build in your backyard. And then a lot of people around the country have been experimenting with building these as sort of small neighborhoods or communities on their own. So on the upper left there is down on the Cape. On the right and below is in Danielson. Where's Oregon, Washington? Anyway, it's been a lot of stuff in the Northwest of these small cottage communities being built. And you can get quite high densities there. So it's a very efficient use of land, but you still have a single family unit to yourself. Typically, they're condominium ownership. So you own the house and the condominium owns the land around it. They can be attached, they could be detached, but people really like them because instead of moving from a house to an apartment, you can move from a big house to a small house. Duplexes, again, very common historically, but not so common in recent development, just some recent examples on the left there. And then the center are two, this is a sort of a front and rear duplex with an old farmhouse that has a second unit behind that. A lot of these probably in Putney. And then this one is, 19th century side by side, which was purpose built with two units next to each other. And then people are building these again now in lots of places where you have two units that share a wall down the middle, but you really feel like you're still living in a single family house on three sides. You have your own front and rear access, and the advantage is you're sharing the cost of the land. So you buy one building lot, you build two houses. Obviously, that's a big economic advantage. So a lot of developers are using that. They'll buy a small ranch house or something. You're probably seeing this here in this area. You buy a small ranch house and you build duplex, you can just make a pretty good profit in a lot of places. So we have the sort of single family houses, you have duplexes, triplexes, and then the townhouse is essentially putting more than one unit with a shared wall in between. These can be built with 3, 4, 5. Back in the 70s, they were built, with like 8 or 10 units all attached, and you sort of still see those at the ski areas, right? They're sort of staggered houses where everyone is exactly the same. A lot of people, as shown here, have been experimenting with doing townhouses that look like attached farmhouse buildings, or that look like attached estate buildings with kind of a shingle style. This one literally covered with shingles. They're getting very common with even affordable housing projects like the ones on the lower part of the slide, and in sort of more affluent areas. This is in planned community in Northampton, which includes a lot of different kinds of housing, but these were sort of custom designed to look like extended farmhouses, but it's essentially 4 or 5 units attached together. And then there's been a real growth in mixed use sort of housing where you have shops, restaurants on the first floor, and then apartments above them. And a lot of people experimenting with this in historic village and town centers, because obviously everybody in the community really wants to see something that fits into the traditional fabric of the community, but it also, the apartments typically pay for the space on the ground floor. So there's a sort of immediate income and a more reliable income typically from the apartments, and then there's some flexibility in the ground floor use. So I assume everyone's comfortable with those sort of 4 categories being part of the experiment here. Right, so cottages, little single family houses, duplexes, triplexes, either as an extended farm building or as sort of side by side.
Can I just say something about the cottage thing? Did they never show a picture of what that looks like when there's a lot of snow? Do you have any? That's the only thing that it's at the time of year where you're like, that's lovely in the summer when you can walk along the paths, but like, what happens when you have 3 feet of snow? I'm just from a homeowner standpoint, snow removal, so it's a thing, right? Will owns their house, and it's a thing. So that's my question. I would love to see a picture of a cottage court in Vermont in a snowy winter, and like, how is it now to traverse those cute little pathways? They look lovely with plants.
That's a good, that's a good point.
Things we think about practicality. What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I guess the advantage is, we all live in single family houses and have to spend a lot of time and effort and money plowing out a long driveway and a long sidewalk oftentimes. The advantage in a cottage court or a cottage community like that, right? Well, the advantage is you're sharing those facilities. So typically there's shared parking at one side of it. So that could be plowed by the guy with the plow.
My dad's parents lived in an urban where a lot of the walkways were covered, so that the snow was on the roof. It wasn't coming down, being in the paths.
Covered walkway.
There you go.
Right, like this-
There's the next side. I'm just picturing snow blowing.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, but I think, I mean, a lot of this discussion about putting, essentially raising the density, putting more units in a smaller area, is that then you're sharing, there's more people available to pay for the maintenance of that.
That's the only thing is that I'm thinking of, not that you need to leave, like, I'm like, you just need to think about where does the snow get moved to?
So another just housing type thing that I would throw up, I'm sure you've looked at it, but there's the Homes for All toolkit that Vermont has developed.
My slides come down to that.
No,
I'm not going to get to those tonight.
they're on your website.
So this is something we want to run by you. So there's this other sort of building type, and it's becoming more common, especially with there's a lot of affordable housing and sort of market rate attainable housing that's using this model. It's essentially it's called stacked flats because each apartment, like this is one apartment, this is another apartment, and there's this shared staircase in the middle, and then you have 2 or 3 of these stacked up, and all of those 4 or 6 units share the central staircase. And so it's sort of like, this is the staircase, 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 6 units. And then they can be designed, you know, with porches and separate entrances for the ground floor. And then, so you have, the ground floor has its own entrances, the upper floors share an entrance, but it can be designed with the scale of a traditional large single-family house. And then everybody has the experience again of living pretty much in a single family environment because you can look out your windows on 3 sides and you don't see, you're not really aware that you're in an apartment. It is obviously it's a more massive and taller structure than you have here in Putney. I mean, you have some big houses, which essentially could be divided like this, but you don't have a lot of them. But the advantage is they're not very deep. So they have more of the scale of a single family home, tall single family home. So is this something that you think people would be comfortable looking at?
We're sitting on campus, walk up the hill, bridges. There's 4 rooms with the center shared walk up for the top 2, and then the bottom 2 have their own entrances on the bottom.
Yeah, very similar idea, very common in campus situations like that.
I for one would like to, I have to imagine it on a site and, you know, as a building type, sure. I mean, they're interesting building types, but let's see how they might plug into the fabric of Putney.
Okay. And then finally, there's sort of the higher end of densities, the more traditional apartment. The difference with apartments is like this one in Amherst. You can, as this one, it's sort of designed again to sort of be broken down into different smaller units that look more like a bunch of single family houses or a barn shape that happen to be pushed together. But the thing that separates an apartment is you have a central hallway with apartments on each side of it. So it's kind of like a dormitory for a lot of us haven't lived in this since college, right? Sort of a dormitory with a central hallway, apartments on each side. You can have a mix of different sizes apartments, and it's a very efficient use of space. But a lot of what drives this, and we don't have time to get into this tonight, is sort of the fire code and building code requirements for like a staircase at each end. And so there's actually a movement nationally to change fire codes, especially since, well, I won't get into it, but anyway, so there's a reason that you see these kind of what I call shoebox apartments all over the place. Because it's an efficient way to build a lot of apartments in a small area and meet all the code requirements. And you can design them, you know, to fit into a fairly rural environment. This is one that's sort of made to look again like a large sort of mansion. This is another one that was sort of divided up. This is by Union Studio Architects. That's done a lot of sort of leading work in creating these sort of roof forms that make a large apartment. Essentially, if you take the roof off of this, it's that big, efficient cube, but it has a very lovely sort of roof and a lot of detailing that makes it fit in. So is this something that people would be interested in testing out here? Yeah.
Big question, zoning height, what is, what's the height of that building? That's 3 floors.
I think most of these are done, with the typical sort of 35 to 40 foot maximum height. And then the stack flats, even with 3 stories, whoops,
Tip, what is it?
35,
35.
I think.
This one is actually done at 30 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is actually done at 30 feet, and what they did is that it's dead on the ground, which is actually good for accessibility. It's basically 3 10-foot floors or something.
I'm going to answer your question about, well, can you imagine these things? And I'm going to say that I think that I'm going to agree with Pip, that it's really helpful to look at these in context, because some of these I think could work well, depending on where they're sited, right? If they're too close to the road, I think it would tower over Main Street, which already feels too narrow. And so things that are set back further and might be built where there's a hill behind them or something, you already have the landscape sort of defining an area where a building that's taller might nicely go in terms of the visual effect of the village. So I'm going to agree with Pip. It depends on the site. It'll be interesting to play with options, looking at a scale of the village. And what does it feel like when you put them there? And where do these kinds of things better belong versus the things that might be cottage clusters or smaller profile in terms of height? And can we put, the combined, the mixed retail housing somewhere? We did have some of that in Putney, and the residential value of it was so high that the retail went, and they just made more apartments on the first floor because it worked better financially for the property owner. So we got more housing, but when we lost a haircutting place and a laundromat and a printing press, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we're seeing that all over.
We do have 3 large residential blocks in town.
Right.
Which are sort of, one from the 90s, 2 more, a little more contemporary design. The one that's being erected now, following some of these same notions of massing, sort of deconstructing the massing various blocks, and a little bit of connected sort of townhouse units. I think there are 3 units associated with that. So they're sort of becoming built examples of that, people could look and get a sense of how that might fit into certain neighborhoods.
All right. Yeah, just didn't want to sort of carry on and sort of come to some point where saying nobody's going to want that. So it depends.
Do people want to live in something like that? In an area where there's Putney? Because it's like, I feel like if you maybe want a place that has that ease and kind of, a nice boxy apartment you can just move right into, you want to be closer to maybe more other services.
Or a city.
Just a question. Or a larger town. So that would be a question for me, is like, in the housing study, did there seem to be demand for people right now, listen, everyone's like, anywhere, anything, please, I just want something, right? It's really hard to find any housing, but realistically, what do people want to live?
what we heard, there's a couple of things to answer that question, because I think that's right. So right now, one of our housing solutions is to provide smaller, accessible housing for older adults to move to out of the bigger homes. And they want to stay in Putney, but there's no place to move to.
Right. So they may be the difference.
And when they move, then another house becomes available that can be used as even 2-family possibly. So part of the solution is creating movement for people to move someplace else within Putney, something more affordable, manageable to meet their needs. That would be closer to services, as you say, Meg.
Right.
That would open up other housing that can be either moved into or renovated and revised, in some way.
Yeah.
Maybe just specific.
But that's where
Items.
our biggest need was affordable housing for seniors and give places for people to move to, which would open up other housing sites and options.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting discussion with the focus groups, right?
Yeah.
Sort of with the, developers and builders, hopefully, what's the market asking for? And then I often ask the question, people often say, I never want to leave my single family house. I'm never going to live there. But then the question is, what do they really value about their single family house? Well, it's privacy, a garden outside their door, a place to walk the dog outside their door. It's a very simple list of things that most people really love about their single family house. So if you could get that with a house that happens to have other units attached to it, people say, oh, this is pretty good, and I can actually afford to live here.
Might not have to maintain it.
Right. I think
It's work.
we'd all love to live probably in a big country estate, but that's not necessarily happening.
The other thing I would say as I'm looking at these things is I think that really having a conversation around parking and the density that it adds to that large of a property being included in sort of any of the parcels that are sort of out there is where is parking for, if we're looking at 22 units and we have potentially 44 cars, where does that go?
Right.
Within that space. And then I would also say, in terms of the conversation around what kind of housing are you looking for, I think that there is a large amount, or people that I have spoken to who are more interested in owning than they are in renting. And that they are interested in being able to invest in a property in that way, and also doing so without an HOA. Because that feels like it's bringing in like a higher level, like you're not actually saving money and you're also having to pay to a larger thing.
Right.
So I would say, at least folks who are sort of like in my age bracket and trying to build up families and feeling like they can own something and are working towards something, that are not as interested in sort of investing in a large scale living situation.
Right. So
And are those people finding things that they can make that dream come true?
I mean, no, that's why I live with my two best friends. So I mean, but if we're talking about numbers of like what are the size of buildings that we're proposing, I think that is where the cottages things may get you a little bit further in conversations than possibly some of those large scale apartment complexes, because I think when they're thinking about it, that's what they're looking for. Yeah.
And I don't know what the magic formula is to get more people to a location, create more demand. The services begin to come because there's some demand. Clearly it's this delicate balance, but if there were a few more people in Putney Village looking for coffee or cake or, dinner, whatever, though we have some of that already, maybe more of it would occur. So, build it and they will come. I don't know. So it's a subtle economic balance, but there is this sense that until you make a move forward, there won't be many opportunities for change.
sure. Just we're gonna stop here, but Sue, you mentioned this is the Vermont Homes for All toolkit, which was developed over the last couple of years, and they're moving forward with this big time. This is the Vermont Agency of Commerce and Development. It's actually a multi-part toolkit. They're doing training for sort of small developers.
There's my second of June in Brattleboro.
Yeah, and so helping people who build houses become developers of small units, and then they're developing these model units, similar to the examples I showed you. So a small aging in place, this could be an accessory dwelling unit, a long narrow building for a narrow lot, which there are a lot of in small village centers. So this could be 3 or 4 units. Again, it's sort of designed as townhouse where you're sharing the walls, but it's front and rear. Or in this case, a village style building with a nice overhanging porch, but again, like 3 units and then one tacked on the back. Or side by side that looks like a big 4 square traditional house. Or the idea of the big house, little house, back house, barn, where each of these becomes 1 or 2 units. So all of these are ideas that we can test. But the exciting thing is they're actually doing measured drawings of these and making them available for free
Right.
at the end of this year, from what I was
We
reading.
tried to put our hand up for Putney to be in that, but that we weren't quite ready, but I think we will benefit from that, you know. So thinking about how these typologies can fit into Putney and testing that is actually a good idea, because that can make it easier. It just creates things that are ready to go versus people having to design the whole thing.
Yeah, and Ozzy's, as we've been hearing, what we've been hearing from you is that telling those stories is just as important as showing a pretty picture. So it's, how does this actually happen in the real world?
Mhm.
And how does it affect? Is it possible, like, to live in a place and own it, and not be part of an HOA, not be having a lot of rules and regulations, but still fit into this kind of a system? So clearly, we have to sort of look for more case studies and develop that further.
Can I ask the question about a specific example? Does anybody know Norwich Meadows in Norwich, Vermont? No, 'cause that's got a kind of like that bottom right, I mean, it's got some single family homes, but then it's got mixed in with them in the same lot, right? That's multi, like 3 or 4 unit building, and it's really nicely done. They have there's a shared drive that goes through it. There's some shared garage areas, but I think that would be a good model.
Yeah, I have another half hour's slides, which actually focus on exactly that, which is like a whole community that's been designed to be sort of a mix of different uses designed as a traditional village. The advantage you have here, you already have the traditional village. You just need to figure out how to take advantage of that, the empty spaces within it. Dylan, back to you.
So we're out of time. So we're gonna look at maps when we come back together again at the next meeting and look at specific places and think about which of these development types or building types would be appropriate in various locations. Before we end, I want to go back to that question that Peter posed at the beginning of the presentation, which is, so the information that I presented about sort of development constraints, I know I went through it very quickly, but did that generally seem to make sense? Was there anything that stuck out to you as like, this doesn't look right? Or I want to know more about this? In other words, do you trust what we showed?
Trust what you showed, and I'll just say, when you look at housing types in the areas where it gets a little steeper and rockier on Kimball Hill and all that, what you'll see are housing that's bigger than it looks, because
Right.
the street level, you see this, but then there's a whole house or units below it. And I'm always surprised when I get a chance to see that, go, oh my gosh, there's more housing here than I ever imagined. So I'm just gonna say that people have been creative over the years to build things that fit the space that they have. And I don't know how,
Right.
that's not, it's not like you plunk something down, it's really custom,
Right.
but we have a bunch of it.
Right.
And
Yeah, so the question for the developers is, can you still do that?
yeah,
And make a sort of viable pro forma, actually build a house with all that extra footings and whatnot, because it does add for the expense.
it does that expense, but when you have little property space, it's,
Right.
you make better use of stuff that's otherwise not very usable because it's steep. Just
No, and we
it's a
talked,
whole reality of, Kimball
Yeah.
Hill.
yeah, we talked before, and the traditional of the bank barn.
Yeah.
And sort of fitting stuff into the landscape is so strong in Vermont.
Mhm.
Before we let people go, we can also spread out the maps, and anyone who does have time to stay can look at them in more detail, right? Would you like to say that?
Nope. I was gonna let him go home.
Can I just throw an idea out there, which is that this is a way to test sort of the development potential of the village on lots of different scales, and we
Yeah.
get to do it here playfully, there are no consequences. Because I think we might bump up into the natural limits of the village from topography and from the social.
Yeah.
Climate that's there, and yeah, you could have lots with 80 units, but none of it makes any sense, at this location or that location, but this might make sense. So I think that natural this is by way of balancing out when the state has given us a list of requirements to meet our fair share of the statewide housing goals. It's great, we accept that responsibility. The Putney Village certainly has some natural limit, and I think we're gonna uncover, what those limits are and to what extent we can be responsible for our
Yep.
fair share.
Definitely. Yep.
Where were these slides? This deck be available?
This deck is available now. It's posted on the town webpage for this project.
It is, the deck
Yes.
is there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we got it late this afternoon and it went up late this afternoon. Thank you, Mary.
Okay.
So it's
And if-
now there.
And if you Google Vermont Homes for All toolkit, you can download a 100-page report.
It's a wonderful report.
of a lot of
actually.
good
It's really
stuff,
interesting.
Karen?
I don't wanna lose focus of the vacant buildings that are in
Mhm.
the village.
Yeah.
And, what I've been hearing tonight is like new build.
Yeah.
And we have quite a few buildings that are either single family that could be converted into multifamily, and they're vacant. And they're old, they need to be updated. And I think that is an opportunity for private owners.
And I think infill development could be focused, on some of those types of properties, is I think what we're saying, because they're very underutilized. And they actually bring property values down around them, right?
They're blighted property.
They're blighted, yeah, let's just be clear about it, and I think our study has to say there's a way forward, for those kinds of things. Some of them are really not even lived in, and some of them are barely lived in.
Is there a list of those we could get?
I think we can come up with
Yeah.
that list.
Yeah.
Was that part of the housing needs assessment, review? Inventory? I don't remember.
Not specifically, they didn't identify that there was a general count, but not like here, here, and here.
Alright, I think we could
We could.
pull some out and let you folks know.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great.
We'll hold them.
No. No,
But I think the right position, the right opportunity presented to people, something could happen.
Someone might make an offer that can't be refused.
Really, I mean, things go to spiral down, people don't have a way out, right? So,
Well, it's not, with our aging population and a lot of large houses outside the center of town. And some of those houses, people would be encouraged to turn those houses into duplexes so that one, 75-year-old. Now has a young family next door. And someone to mow the grass for them, and they get to stay in their own home. And I think that intergenerational thing, that a lot of cultures, 3 generations in one house, I think it helps all, helps young people respect the elders, and the elders love having kids around for short periods of time.
What home care is trying to do.
yeah,
If anybody has time in their hands, I've done this in my neighborhood, but you can look at the old census records from like the 1850s. And they would write down the name and occupation of everybody in every house,
wow.
just walking down the street. It's really interesting, and actually literally, but everybody does have time, because you see that every house had multiple generations and often unrelated people. Farm hands, of course, were living in farmsteads, but often, younger workers were living in the village, and people had
They had rooms.
had rooms, and a lot of people rented out rooms all the time. And then had 3 or 4 generations living in one place. So it's really interesting exercise and reminding, that's how these places worked, before we had oil and gas and electricity. It was built and maintained by just hundreds and hundreds of people living in a place that now has many fewer.
All right, so Sue, you had some close the meeting out things?
Yeah, not a lot, actually. Begins with a thank you.
All right.
To all of you for the.
So we will stick around for a little while. You can look at the big maps. We have a map that shows you those development constraints, and then overlaid on that is the property boundaries and the zoning capacity for each parcel.
Yeah. So, again, I'm gonna just say some thank yous to the Dodson Flinker. Thank you, Peter, Eli. Helena's not here, but, Dylan, thank you, for this work. And thank you very much to Landmark for hosting us here, and Alexis is gone, but she did a great job setting us up, and we really appreciate the use of this space. I just want to get a show of hands. What do you think about using this meeting for this space for these meetings going forward? Yeah, yes,
You're right up here.
yes,
It's nice weather enough.
yeah, okay, great. Maybe other people can, other people can offer you a ride. Put your hand up if sometimes I give Martha a ride, but if other people could. Martha lives right across from the post office, essentially.
Marie.
Yeah. Yeah, Terry, because you're almost next door. Yeah, great. So we'll think about using this space again, depending on availability. Thank you again, Landmark. We need your focus group lists, and we'll be sending reminders out about that. And Vanessa and I have a meeting on Thursday to call those and try to get it all boiled down, because the 16th will be here like that, and we need to get the messages out. So that'll be happening. Our next meeting, we will talk with you once we've talked to Dylan further about the schedule. We do have a regular next planning commission meeting, the first Tuesday in May. There is this one on the books that we might do on the 21st of April. We need to do some zoning work. We'll have to figure out what to do, but we'll let you know when our next meeting of this committee is. But we may be asking you for your help in between. Vanessa will send notes out, and we hope that you'll rise to that. There could be some small meetings to do some work. We need help with flyers. So we'll be back to you about that. Even if we're not having a meeting, there's lots of things to do to be ready on the 16th and beyond. And we'll have our schedule for the charrette, the farmer's market, all that. We'll have that real soon, and we'll get some cards made that you can hand out. We'll have some flyers, and you see the outreach plan. Please look at the outreach plan. Find your name, where you could put your name on it, where you could be helpful, and let us know. And Vanessa and I will be putting that together. What else, Vanessa? Is that those were the main messages to give about that? Yeah. Okay. And I think anything else, Pip, that we no Pip's over there. Okay. Anything else, Pip, that we needed to say? All right, we'll send you some follow-up notes from this soon, just to remind you of all these things. And if you can make it to the select board meeting next Wednesday, those of you who would like to be there for the Wyndham Regional Planning Commission, that could be very helpful to have you there.
Will there be a reminder sent out?
We're going to send a reminder out very soon. Yes. And let you know where we landed on the focus groups. Okay.
If you have not signed in, please make sure that you put your name on the sign-in sheet.
Yeah. Okay. With that, then I'm going to thank you all. Take a look at the materials that are here. I appreciate that you came. Sorry that we're going a little late. Sorry about the AV problems that was a late start. We are adjourned. Thank you, Christopher and Dan. They're gone.
Well,
Yeah.
My phone